Okay. Just out of freaking sheer frustration at this point, I am going to do this not because I remember why I was doing it. I truly don't even remember why I was doing this. But at this point, I know that I was trying to do this. And um I hesitate to even say this because every time this happens, people tell me that I'm crazy and people don't believe me. But uh my neighbor is smoking weed or a vape or something. He's vaping, probably weed vaping in the bathroom. And every time I go to the bathroom, I get high as fuck. And I'm trying to continue moving forward with my business. I'm trying to code and it's not easy because I'm freaking high. And at this point, I'm just gonna start smoking weed myself, just being high all the time because at least it's better to just be high all the time than to just randomly get high when you have absolutely no control over it. But I mean, every time I go to the bathroom, I'm coughing, and then my heart is racing, and then I'm like up, bouncing around, and fucking listening to music or whatever. Things that I do when I'm on weed. Things that I only ever do when I'm high on weed. And I didn't do any weed. All I did was go to the bathroom. And this is the fourth neighbor that this has happened with. All four of them have occasionally smoked weed. And every time I start to get to the point where I'm like, oh, it's in my head. I'm just imagining this shit. Um, and then they move out or they go on vacation. And then after a few days, I'm like, oh my God, I'm thinking so clearly. This is so great. I'm so productive. What happened? I'm like, oh, the neighbor's gone. And there's really nothing I can do because, for starters, weed is not illegal. So I wouldn't, even if it was illegal, I wouldn't call the cops on my neighbor over this. But um, when I tell the neighbor, "Dude, your weed is getting me high," first of all, they don't believe me because they think that secondhand weed smoke can't get people high. And they don't understand how insanely sensitive to weed smoke I am for whatever reason. Even though I've smoked tons of weed, I've done tons of edibles, I have always been extremely, extremely sensitive to marijuana. It turns me into a completely different person. And it doesn't mellow me out. It does not calm me down. I cannot sleep. It gives me like insane crack energy. And honestly, sometimes I can work well on weed. Like I can make websites and stuff like that. What I cannot do is talk well, explain things well, do sales, or think through things logically. And you do need to be able to do those things sometimes in order to run a business. So so yeah, there's really nothing I can do about it because when I say it to the neighbor, they say you're imagining it. It's not. We're not doing that. Um, the property company really cannot do anything that wouldn't be a violation of the privacy of the tenant. So the only thing that they do is they send out a mass text saying people have reported the smell of marijuana smoke, which isn't even true. I don't smell marijuana smoke. I assume they're vaping it. So there's no smell. They're just randomly getting very, very, very high. And I mean, there was a day when new neighbor first moved in where I had drank a bunch of weed beer and taken a bunch of weed edibles. And I was like, so I had consumed at least at least 60, 70 milligrams. And I was super high, but then I came all the way down, hours later, came all the way down, was totally back to normal. And then I went to the bathroom. And after going to the bathroom, I was so high, I was having convulsions. I was like just having convulsions. Like I was so much higher just from going to the bathroom and being exposed to their weed vape smoke than I had been after consuming like 4 weed beers and a strong weed edible. And as I said, I cannot sleep. If I'm on weed, I can't sleep. So they come home after work and that's when they're smoking. And they smoke late at night, and then they probably smoke and go to sleep like normal people. Normal people can go to sleep when they're high on marijuana. But for me, that was like the end of my day, at the end of a long day, and then suddenly I'm back into like for hours. So it's not helpful. It is not ideal. But anyways. Okay, so the thing that I want to say about these web forms, um, let's choose one to go to here. Let's see here. Real estate? Did I do a real? I don't even remember doing a real estate one. Actually, I want to go to one that has its own background because that way we can be sure that we have actually gotten to the background. It's unfortunate that the best one I have is the open mic sign up one because comedy open mics are not exactly your best example of like a functioning business. Okay, so here we are at the magic one. This is for a magician. Also not the best example of a business chatbot. But actually let's go to 40 loads. Holy shit. Oh my god. There's literally no, I mean, oh my god, this is what happened with the last neighbor too. Like he was a total pothead. As soon as he woke up, he would smoke weed. As soon as he got home from work, he smoked weed. So there was just like this window during the daytime when I could be home and not be high. The rest of the I wake up in the morning like if I only got like 2 hours of sleep, I suddenly wake up and I'm high. And for that guy, I actually got so used to it that when he left, I had a problem because I like had to. I was like I got really depressed because the weed was actually improving my mood. And yeah, it's just ridiculous when you don't have to. Okay, so anyways, how can I assist you? Hi. Is there a thing here or what? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure that there is actually. Damn it. Return to index. Default. I think this one is default. Support. What is support? I do not know. Momo sushi. Um, okay. Wait, do I have one for AI upgrade? Okay. AI upgrade. Let's do AI upgrade. That would be mine. Oof. Okay. Provide your full name. Okay. So my point with these web forms that I want to make, and I'm not sure why I really want to make this point because it's not really, I don't know. I feel like if I can make this point well, if I practice making this point, I can make it pertinent to potential clients. But right now, this first time through, it's not going to be very pertinent to potential clients. But the point is that these web forms are easy to make. All I need is a text file with a list of questions, and then it is a web form. And because, as I'm demonstrating here, there is a mechanism to swap out uh, the the bot that is currently being utilized. And so, in theory, although I don't have this working right now, um, you could have like multiple stages of web forms. You could have, you could combine as many web forms as you want all in one web form and make it so that it swaps out like when one is completed, it swaps to the next one. Um, and um, so that means that to make a new web form for somebody, which a lot of these like 40 loads, magic, on the dot, whatever, these are all like they were all within a I put them um, inside of a demo website. And so to create that web form chatbot, um, it took me like 2 minutes. It only takes like 2 minutes to make a new web form. Um, so to me, that's really important because before, to make any chatbot at all, it would take me a long time. Like I have to, like I would have to craft. Like before, if I was making a chatbot, it was like I was crafting a new chatbot from scratch, with a new set of files and now it's like the files are all there. They don't change. The only thing that changes is just one web form. I just have to pop in the list of questions, and we got it. And so last night, what I was thinking, and I started to work on it before I got really, really high on secondhand weed smoke, is so I've made blog bots. I've made rag bots, which is just a bot connected to a vector database. I've made quiz bots, although I don't know, I haven't seen people being too particularly interested in the quiz bots, so I'm not really including those here. But I've made the review bots, the Google review bots for sure. I'm actually working on calendar bots, which is just a bot connected to a calendar, and XML bots. This is just a bot connected to a blog of a blog feed. But those ones are kind of like new in development. Haven't really gotten too far with them. But what else do I have? So there's the web forms and the FAQ. To create an FAQ, it's literally the exact same one as the web form. I don't have to do anything else. So because for the review bots, the web forms, the FAQs, the reg bots, and I'm probably missing something here, but who cares? Then like I have basically a fully automated way of creating those. So if I were to get a new client, like right now, if I were just to choose like a random business, so I'm going to make a chatbot for random business. In order to make them a review bot, a an FAQ bot, a web form bot, and a reg bot. I could just I could make all of those. It would be like a matter of 15 minutes in theory. Now I might run into some problems, and then it would take longer. But even if I did, like I just have to. In theory, I could, so I could make like 4 of these per hour, let's say. If that's the goal, which I don't know why that would ever be the goal. It wouldn't be. That's not really the point. So, which is the point? Which is the issue here? The issue is, for me, the point I really want to make is that the amount of effort it takes to make these is so much less than it used to be, which makes me have so much extra time for testing them and for like refining the design elements and making sure that it looks good and doing other things and that I can feasibly lower the price. Because before I could lower the price just to like get things going, just to get a client, just to like hopefully establish a referral source. But in the end, I'm still spending like weeks or months on that chatbot. Um, Whereas now I can lower the price and it makes sense because I didn't put that much time into it. Although again, the goal is not to lower the price necessarily. So if you compare that to something like, you don't have to install a new WordPress to make a new chatbot. You don't have to, like, if you're using chat-based, you'd have to create a new chatbot. You'd have to, um, if you're, what other examples? Just had another example. That was a good one. But yeah, you don't have to like go through any cumbersome process to create a new one. It's literally just uh, one file. Just upload one file, and now we have a new web form chatbot. And then we can add a FAQ to that. And then it's not fixed in terms of like, even though it's so easy to set up like that, then you can still continue to expand on it. If you want to connect it to a vector database, you can do that. If you want to connect it to a Google review bot, you can do that. Um, and then eventually, if you want to connect it to a calendar, you can do that. If you want to connect it to like a blog feed, you can do that. Um, but that's sort of getting away from the point. The point I was originally hoping to make is that the web forms, oh man, what the hell was the point I was originally trying to make? Um, I guess it's just that for the web forms, the reason why you would want a web form chatbot as opposed to a normal traditional web form is because you can set up the notifications however you want. You can have people clarify things if an input doesn't make sense. The chatbot can just can clarify to them it doesn't make sense. And also, if you want to change any aspect of it, it's actually easier than with a web form because it's a text file. You literally just change the wording, change the instructions to the chatbot. Um, if you simply change the instructions to the chatbot, then it will behave differently. And you can't do that with a HTML web form. With a traditional HTML web form, you can't be like, except be less strict about the type of inputs that people are putting in, or be more strict, or like explain this part better. You can't just say that and have it do that. But with an AI chatbot, you can. And it is extensible, endlessly extensible. The only limit to the extensions is the type of extensions which I have developed up until this point. So, having said all that, this is the type of information that is only relevant to a developer. Only a developer would appreciate what I've said here. And even then, they may not. They'd have to be a developer that like agrees with me and understands what I'm talking about. But the point is, this information is not particularly relevant to a client. It's not particularly relevant to, I mean, it's kind of relevant to a client, but like you'd have to frame it differently, explain it differently. And even then, it wouldn't be the key point for them. They don't care that like it's easy for me to make. They don't care that it's extensible. What they want to know is that this is going to improve their business, improve their website, help them generate more leads, which Ultimately, a chatbot is a passive thing. It cannot help you generate more leads if you're not getting traffic to your website, and which is the same as a web form, which honestly is the same as a website. You can have an amazing website, and if you don't have any traffic, it doesn't accomplish anything. So, if so, the key, is to show people how this is going to generate traffic. And the problem is, it's not going to generate traffic. It is not meant to generate traffic. It's not what it's supposed to do here. So it's sort of like, but so a business that already has traffic, that already has like a lot of, I mean, a business that already has traffic, um, they wouldn't want to work with me because first of all, they already have an established system. They already have an established process for however they're doing it. So it would be a big thing for them to mess with it. And like if they're a bigger company or they work with bigger companies, and they wouldn't want to just choose from their point of view, a totally random solo developer to run their stuff. Um, and then a smaller business, a business that doesn't have a lot of traffic, again, they wouldn't have a problem working with me, but this isn't actually going to move the needle for them because it's on their website and their website is getting no traffic. So unless they're going to do an ad campaign or something, or an SEO, they're, just something to generate traffic, this will not benefit them. And they tend to not know what I'm talking about or what they're talking about when it comes to this stuff. So a lot of times there's a lot of talking, going back and forth, telling them what I do, telling them what I can do for them before they realize that this isn't actually going to help them. So that will waste a lot of my time. And that is why, like, the sales process. That's why, and I've had like arguments with anybody that's willing to talk to me, my friends and family, where they're like, "Well, why are you building these things for free? Like, you need to get paid. Uh, like, you need to be making these things for money. Otherwise, why are you making them?" And it's like, um, that sales process is very time consuming, and most of the time, it doesn't succeed in making a sale. And when it does, I probably had to offer more and ask for less in order to make the sale go through. So in the end, it's just a lot of time uh, for very little payoff. And so it's honestly a better use of my time is to make the chatbots better. But making the chatbots better on their own does also not accomplish anything because that doesn't sell them. Um, but at the end of the day, I'd rather have a better product and no sales than not only have a product that's not better, but also that I have somewhat forgotten how it works and how I would edit it, how I would improve on it because I haven't been coding. I haven't been, you know, editing those files. So to go back into it, I have to pay the cost of context switching. And it's not any better. And I didn't make any sales. Um, so ultimately, I'm just improving and improving and improving this thing, and not making any money. Which I guess, my point is that as I improve it, a big part of the improvement is two things. First of all, that it becomes more easy to explain to people. Like the Google review bots are the best example. Like it's so obvious what they do. They do one thing. You can see why a business would want this. It's not confusing. And then secondly, it just takes me less time to create it because by saying I make it better, part of what I mean by make it better is automating the process of making it. So if it takes me, if it takes me 3 seconds to make a Google review bot, if I can pop them out 100 at a time, that leaves me with a lot of time to contact businesses and talk with businesses, just all that, or whatever. Just more time to figure out what is the best thing to do. Um, so as I get better at as I get better at streamlining the process of creating these things, um, that makes the whole thing more feasible. But it doesn't answer the primary problem, which again is that I'm not making any sales, so I need to do something else to make sales, and I'm not helping my clients make sales, so I need to do something. Which brings me to what the plan has been for a very long time now, but I've never really gotten any traction with it. And I've never really done it consistently and followed up. However, I have gotten like some pretty good signs that it is feasible, which is to work with SEO companies because that way it eliminates my need to do all the selling. I don't have to worry about how this client is going to generate traffic because that's the SEO company's job. So yeah, so it solves all the main problems, and it leaves me with just developing the chatbots. So all I have to do is develop the chatbots. So so then the question is why I am not calling SEO companies like right now, for example. And the answer is, um, regardless of regardless of what Alex Hormozy would think about this, or any other business guru, or anybody anywhere, or any developer that's talking about whatever, I have to start by improving the chatbot, then make content about the chatbot and the improvement that I made, and then contact SEO agencies. It has to go in that order. And everybody tells me that that's the wrong order. That what I should do is like, oh, actually, like developing the chatbots and improving the chatbots is like that's what you could do like after hours, like in your free time, and uh making content is also that's like something you could do after hours and in your free time. And it's like The people that say these things don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about, and they mean well, and they can see because they can understand the main problem. The main problem being that I'm not making money. And so they think that I have to do sales or like get a job and then do this in my free time, in my off time. Because that's the part of it that they can make sense of. Um, but ultimately, they have never, they have not developed, they've never developed a chatbot. They've never made a chatbot business. They've never done what I'm doing. So whether or not that is actually correct advice, they have no idea whatsoever. They do not understand how this works, and so they're not actually helpful. Um, that is the first point. The second point is that it's like a chef. If let's say a chef wants to start their own catering business, or they want to, whatever. Yeah, they want to sell meals, like, and it's like telling them that they have to spend the main s- portion of their day, like making marketing material and selling, like calling people and trying to get catering gigs. And and then like in their free time they will actually cook food. And it's like maybe, I mean, if you develop if you reach a certain level of expertise, that is true. Like if you're a chef and like you're such an amazing chef that you could take months off, and when you get back into it, just you're immediately know exactly what to do, exactly how to create a giant meal or what an amazing meal for a ton of people. Like you have all the equipment, you have all the tools, you know how everything works, or you have years of experience training other chefs, so you could like immediately put a whole team to work. If like, then that's true. But if you are not that good of a chef, and I'm not that good at making chatbots, because this is a thing that has only existed for a couple of years now. Um, so there has not been enough time to put in my 10,000 hours or whatever. Uh, so like, yeah, if you're a chef that isn't like the most amazing, you need to spend the majority. If the majority of your day needs to be spent cooking, the main chunk of the day is going to need to be doing the main thing that you do. And then and then after that you do some marketing and you do some sales. But what you're marketing and selling is the thing that you made. You're just taking whatever dish you made, and taking pictures of it and getting reactions of it, and kind of just trying to explain to people why you're enthusiastic about this meal or this dish, and why you even made it, and then how people are responding to it. Um, and yes, that is not the ideal. Like, ideally, you're like focused on business, and like you don't have to make amazing dishes to get catering gigs. You don't have to be the best chef in the world to start a restaurant or to start to sell meals or whatever. Like, but um, I think for a significant number of people, and myself included, that's the only way it makes sense. The only way it makes sense is if you start by doing the thing, and then after you've done the thing, you spend some time marketing and doing sales, and then repeat every day, every week, every month. Because if you take time away from doing the thing, and your time is getting filled up with doing marketing and sales, and then you get a client, and then you have to switch to doing the thing, and you have to pay the cost of context switching, and you're not even good at that thing, and you still have your schedule has now been totally filled up with marketing and sales activities, which you now have to completely abandon to switch back to doing the thing. It's like the only way it's sustainable is if you structure your day, you structure your time so that you do the thing, and then with your leftover time, you do marketing and sales. It it sure we all would love it if we could do the sales and the marketing first, and then do the thing. But for the reasons I just explained, I don't think that's honestly feasible or sustainable or realistic for most people that are trying to like basically just take a service that you provide and turn it into a business. But for the most part, it's just the business is just a wrapper around the service that you're providing, your own labor. It's just a wrapper around your labor, okay? So if you're running like a mobile kitchen, people can come pick up meals from you or people can order and you've got a delivery person, like your number one thing is like knowing how to cook those meals. Like where to get the supplies and having the tools and equipment and planning out your time and blah blah. Like that's the number one thing. Because if you have the best marketing and sales in the world, but you don't know how to cook those meals, then you don't have a business. And it's weird that I even have to like make this argument. And the reason I feel like I have to make this argument so much is because there's so much argument to there's so many arguments making the opposite argument, and myself have been one of those people a lot. And I even agree with the counter argument to a huge extent in a huge number of cases. Like, um, ultimately, it kind of comes down to whether you're trying to build a business or become like a master craftsman at a particular thing. You know, but if you're like a developer and you're trying to start a business, then like if you've been a full-time developer, you went to school for computer science, you went to Stanford, blah blah blah. Most likely, you're going to spend way too much time coding, way too much time developing. You're going to do things that only developers would care about, and you're going to not put in enough time on the sales and the marketing. And what you really need to do is focus on the sales and the marketing, focus on what your clients need, focus on what is actually solving business problems, focus on what people will actually pay you for, and then um, go on from there. But in this scenario, we are assuming that you are already a proficient coder. And we are assuming, or that you have a partner that is a proficient coder, one of the two. So in my case, that is not true. I am not proficient enough with making the chatbots. It's not something that I can just take for granted. I have to constantly be putting time and effort into my own chatbot developing abilities. And if I take a break from that, then coming back is not easy. It's a huge cost in terms of context switching. And um, that fact means that when I'm doing marketing and sales, I'm less confident. It's like if you take a chef that's like not like fully confident, and now instead of having them cook all day and then do marketing and sales based on what they cooked, um, you're having them do marketing and sales all day, and the whole time they have doubts about, am I really going to be able to cook this? Like, am I going to mess up the meal? Am I going to burn everything? Is this going to? So then their sales and marketing is worse because it's full of self doubt, and then they finally get a client and they have to switch, and they do actually mess it up. They're not actually proud of the service that they have delivered. So, I mean, if you're focused on developing a business, that doesn't yeah, you could do that. You could do that. So, like, for example, um, one of the chatbots that I have live the other day had a problem, and somebody was like, "Hey, can you fix this?" And I'm like, "I made that like I made that a year and a half ago." I like it to in order to the way I make chatbots now is completely different than the way I did then. It uses Assistance API. Assistance API is gonna be deprecated soon. So if there really is a big problem, to go fix that is almost honestly, I might as well just scrap it and start over from scratch with a different API. And secondly, I just don't I mean, I would have to go and spend a lot of time reacquainting myself with how that code works in order to fix it. Um, and that's just one example. Let's say for the review bots, let's say I will go to a client and I'm like, "Oh, check out this review bot." And they're like, "Oh, that's awesome, but can you make it do this instead?" And it's like, it's been a it's been 4 months maybe since I wrote the code. It's been like at least a month since I looked at that code. So so to make a little edit to the code, um, it might not be that easy. It might not be that easy. Like it takes time to go look at the code and remember how I did it and why I did it that way. And then since I've made the review bots, I've made other types of bots since then. And each time I make a new one, so I have to go back and see, oh, where was like how was it operating at this point in time when I made these? And then it depends on the Google Places API. Is my Google Places API account in good standing? Did I, the last time I edited that code, did I actually break it and then I didn't realize I had broken it and then I have to go figure out what that problem is before I can even do anything with it? Like if you're coding every day, if you're looking at your files every day, you're improving your files every day, you're making new things every day, then these are all issues that they're front of mind. And then when you need to go do that, you don't have to pay the context switching cost. And if, if I needed to the assistance API, if I want to uh, just completely scrap that and start over, then I probably would already know, I would already have a rough idea of how to do that. Just go for a walk and think about exactly what I need to do and then have it all organized in my brain and then come back and it's like maybe it could be a 2-hour task. But if I haven't looked at the files and I haven't been making chatbots for 2 weeks, then it's not a 2-hour task. Then it's going to be a 3-day task just to reestablish the context. And then it will still take longer than 2 hours because I just haven't found the correct organization of how it all should work. Yeah. So then it's like the chef, oh, the chef like gets an order and it's like, okay, like I've been spending all my time doing sales and marketing. So now I have to go back and remember. And it's like, oh shit, I forgot that I don't have this one kitchen supply that I need. Oh, I forgot that this one ingredient isn't available in my city and I have to order it from out of town and it takes 2 weeks to get here. Like things like, just all sorts of little logistical issues that you would have already had front of mind if you had been doing that every day. That's actually good. So I do need to sort of be in the weeds of the coding. I need to be in the weeds of the coding on a pretty much daily basis. However, if you actually want to get good at sales and marketing, if you want to be good enough to be effective at any sort of sales and marketing, you also have to get into the weeds on that. And you can't be in the weeds of two different things at the same time. You just can't. So you get into the weeds of the sales and the marketing, but then I have to come back and get in the weeds of the coding. I have to keep doing that until I'm at a point where my skill level is enough. Uh, um, there's less of a context switching cost. Or that if I'm doing a bad job because I'm not really, if I'm playing my C game, let's say, that's enough. A C game is enough when it comes to sales or marketing, which could be the case. Okay, but having said that, I absolutely have to be in the weeds of the development. That's not an easy thing. That is not an easy thing because, at least for me, to get into the mindset of a developer, to be thinking in a logical fashion, to be thinking in an organized fashion, um, in terms of just what is even worth doing and what is the thing that can move things forward. Um, I need to have some time to myself. I need to go for a walk. I need to clear my mind. I need to be in that state of mind. I need to be fully rested. Um, it's not something I can just snap into and snap out of. It's just not. And when I say development mode, there's at least two different forms of development mode. Um, There's probably way more, but like for one, there's like just especially when you have stepped away from it, coming back to it and just getting back into that frame of mind. That's one. And then two is when you're looking at error logs and debugging. And these are two like totally different frames of mind. Kind of. They kind of, reinforce each other to a certain extent. But they are different. And so when I say I need to go for a long walk and think clearly and like, do a brain dump and then then organize my thoughts and do some brainstorming and then blah blah, like all that. I'm talking about getting like what is the next step to move things forward? You know, I don't need to do all that to debug something. Although honestly, sometimes if there is a bug somewhere and I can't figure it out, then that helps a lot to just be thinking very clearly about it. But usually that's not necessary because just messing around with testing things and looking at error logs and trying different things will be enough. That said, if something's broken and I haven't been in coding mode for multiple days and I try to just jump in and debug it, a lot of times I'll end up making things worse rather than solving the problem. So, um, okay, so that's developer mode. And then, okay, so the thing is, but it's the first type of development mode, not the debugging mode, but the like, okay, so what is a good idea to do move things forward? Even if it is just because it's cool and not because it's for a client or something like that. But the point is I have to keep making progress on that. Just the same way that a chef needs to keep on trying to make new dishes that they think are good dishes to make. Um, when they stop doing that, they stagnate as a chef. And when they stagnate as a chef, the whole impetus to do the thing is now lacking. Anyway, so sometimes it takes multiple days. I need to go for a long walk. I need to go for a multi-day walk. I need to drink a lot of caffeine. I need to do a lot of writing just to get in that state of mind. But as I'm doing this, I've got two timers going on. One is like the social timer, and two is the money timer. And they kind of interact, which is to say that as I'm trying to get into code mode and I'm trying to code, and then once I code, there's bugs and I have to debug. And all this time I'm not doing sales and I'm not doing marketing. And I'm running out of money. So I know that, if I'm running out of money, then I'm not going to be able to continue to just focus on coding all day if I have no money. If I can't pay the rent, if I have no idea where money's going to come in from. So then I have to interrupt that process, which I'm not going to be able to jump back in exactly where I was. I have to once again go through the whole context switching cost in order to get back to where I was. But I have to do something, either beg people for money or go apply for jobs or ask for government assistance or whatever I have to do. Um, and so I cannot focus and just develop. It's if I don't know that there's money coming in, I can't do that. So then when I find some money, I make some money, I do something, I get some money, and then I have a very limited window of opportunity to actually think clearly about coding. And secondly, if I eventually will be so lonely that I'm too depressed to function or think clearly. That happens inevitably when you live alone, when you like I don't have coworkers. I'm not in a relationship. I don't there's if I allow myself, if I truly focus on code mode, I get myself into code mode, I code something amazing, um, then it's not going to matter if I get too depressed to function at some point. So I need to socialize, but not only do I need to socialize, I need to know that I have socialization opportunities available in my future without having to go recreate an entire, social life each time. Um, and it interacts with money because obviously, if you don't have any money, it's pretty hard to go out. It's pretty hard to go socialize. It's hard to meet people when you have no money. So I'm trying to get into code mode and push things forward. But in the meanwhile, I know that I my social like counter is getting lower and lower and lower, like how long it's been set, and then my money counter is getting lower and lower and lower, and I only have a limited amount of time before one or both of them hits a critical level where it is going to make doing anything else other than solving that problem impossible. And a lot of times, if you're yeah, it can be harder to make money when you have no money. It can be harder to make friends when you have no friends. So it's like honestly don't want to wait until they're so low that it's an emergency scenario. You want to take care of that before it gets to that emergency scenario, which leaves you a very limited amount of fucking time to get your head clear and think clearly and think logically and review everything that you've done and think about why you were doing everything that you did, whether or not it was even a good idea, and then what is the next step from there. And anybody that I talk to about this, they massively oversimplify this whole entire thing. They think that like there's a simple solution, and they don't even understand the problem. They have not even come close to understanding the problem, and they immediately jump to, "Well, do this." And then when I say why that's not going to work, they're like, "Oh, see, this is why it's not working because you're negative, or because you're making excuses, because you're procrastinating, because you're afraid of rejection, because blah 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 blah." And it's like, no, you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Shut the hell up. Uh, or they say, um, okay, like that's great. Like I see what you're doing, and it's great that you're doing that, and blah 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 blah. Like I agree with your synopsis of the situation, but you have no money, and so you can't keep going if you don't have any money. And they are 100% right. And there's not much I could say about that. But if I let the lack of money uh, stop me from making progress, then I can't make progress. You see? So I kind of have to just keep pushing forward and hope that some magical thing happens, which up until now, magical things just keep happening. So to recap, I have to move things forward with code wise and just keep on improving my code on a consistent basis. I have to do that. That's just an essential part. That's like if without doing that, that's like saying I'm gonna drive a car without putting any gas in the gas tank or without charging the battery if it's an electric car. Like it's just that is an essential component of the thing. That said, that is not easy. Like it is a time consuming process, and for me to, for example, if I were to try to like, oh, I'm gonna go for a long walk, clear my head, and like organize my thoughts. If I can easily get distracted, like one phone call, run into a random person. In fact, uh, I tried to do it the other day, and what happened? I went to Burger King, and I ran into somebody I knew at Burger King, and we had a great talk. I enjoyed the time. I learned about this guy's business. I learned about how he operates. He gave me some well-meaning advice, but in terms of like getting my brain into code mode, that day, the entire day was destroyed. There's no, it's not even, it's not something I can even do afterwards. Like I would have to, the whole thing where like I woke up and like went out for a walk and like, got into like this very autistic state of mind where I'm not in being socially interactive and I'm just like thinking logically and then I'm writing things out on paper. Having a 2-hour conversation with him completely got me out of that frame of mind. Now I'm in social mode, and now in order to reestablish that, I would have to start over from the beginning, go for a long walk. And honestly, like I needed to, I kind of need that the first hit of caffeine coincides with my attempt to shift into that state of mind. So if it doesn't, then I kind of have to wait till the next day. Like I got to go for a walk, and then the next time be at a coffee shop where nobody's going to talk to me. Um, and I mean, a lot of people would say like, "Oh, that's too fragile," or what. But I feel like like if you were a novelist and you're like, "I'm going to get a big chunk of my novel done today. Like I'm going to get some really good writing in today," and then you go to the coffee shop and you see somebody there, and then you get into a great conversation with them. Like you're not going to be able to jump out of that conversation and immediately go right back into writing that key part of the book. Maybe like if inspiration grabs you, maybe, which, if I was talking to a coder, then that sort of thing might happen. But talking to a business person, talking to somebody who's in real estate, like you're not going to jump out of that conversation and go right into like, oh, I'm in my flow state with coding. No, like, so I kind of had to start over. So I did. I said, okay, this day, I'm taking a mulligan on this day. It's too bad. I'm going to have to come back to it tomorrow. So the next day, I did the same thing. I woke up, I went out for a walk, I went to a coffee shop, I got a coffee, I started writing, and I went to the bathroom and I left my bag at my seat. And when I came back, this old lady wanted to tell me that I shouldn't leave my bag at the seat when I go to get a coffee or when I go to the bathroom because somebody's going to steal my bag. And um okay, fine. But anyways, then we ended up getting into a conversation. I talked to her for a long time, and um, so I don't know. I felt like she needed somebody to talk to, and so I was happy to talk to her, and like I enjoyed our conversation. And she had a very unique perspective on things, being like a longtime Minneapolis resident that has like a conservative outlook on things, and that lives in Riverside. You know, I was very curious to get her take on everything. However, again, complete destruction of my attempt to get my brain into code mode. So it's like, okay, take a mulligan on that. And then I come home and I'm trying to code at home, and the neighbor's smoking weed, and I get high on the neighbor's weed, and that's gonna mess that up. Hopeless. Weed is good for marketing. Well, at least the non-verbal part of marketing. Um, but it is not good for coding, and it is not good for selling, and it is not good for explaining why I'm doing what I'm doing, how things work. Anything that requires a voiceover, not helpful. But at this point, I'm almost like resigned to the idea that I just have to figure out how to start a business while I'm high on weed constantly, because I'm going to be high on weed every morning and every evening, whether I like it or not. And so I might as well just get high all day. And that way, at least there's not these like ups and downs. At least I just have to figure out how to function while I'm high on weed constantly at this point. So Right. So the first day, yeah, I was trying to get into code mode, did not do it successfully. The second day, I was trying to get in code mode, did not do it successfully. And honestly, like at a certain point, I need to take a caffeine break. I have to like do a tolerance reset on caffeine. Otherwise, that stops accomplishing anything for me. So it's like day three, I have to like not drink coffee if I want to have any hope that that coffee will do anything for me on day four. Which at this point, I'm just chugging energy drinks and tea constantly. So like that's hopeless. Um, and I don't really remember what happened on the next day after that, but you know, at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, based on how things have been going over the past 2 days and based on how much money I have left and based on how much like I can't keep doing this. I have to try something else. So that's when I asked somebody for a job and then I went and did a job for 2 weeks. So obviously, having a more than full-time job is not conducive to being in code mode. So get out of that. I have a small, small, small amount of extra money to work with. And that's my limited, very, very limited window to attempt to get back into code mode, move things forward a little bit, then make marketing material based on what I did, and then try to do some sales. Even though Alex Hormozy and every other person that ever did any business advising, any entrepreneurial advising, including myself, would say that I've got that backwards. That what you got to do is start with sales and then do a little bit of marketing when you have time after the sales work is done, and then coding with whatever time is left over. But again, I'm saying that is not freaking feasible. That is like telling a baker that instead of waking up at 4 a.m. to bake bread and then attempting to sell the bread that you have baked, that you should wake up in the morning to call people and convince them to buy bread. It does not make sense. I mean, sure it does for certain businesses. I don't think it makes sense for this business, especially again, if this baker is not a particularly skilled baker, if they're still learning how to bake, they have to bake every day. If they already have 20 years of baking experience, then they could just take it. If they don't have to bake it that day, they could take the day off and just call people and try to set up catering deals and try to set up try to get orders for the next day and then bake the next day without any issues, without any concerns about whether or not they're going to be able to deliver on that, without worrying that they're going to mess up the order, whatever. But if they're not like they haven't been doing it for 20 years, they don't have that level of expertise, then they have to keep baking every day. Because if they're making sales and they're not making sales. The sales aren't going through because they're not a good salesperson. They have to get better at being a salesperson. They have to get better. They have to refine their approach. They have to refine who they're talking to and what they're saying to them and blah 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 and get better and better and better at sales and get into the weeds on the sales. Um, and so then by the time they actually make a sale, it's been a week or 2 weeks, and they have to go back to the baking, and they're not a proficient baker. So they've lost the context of the baking. It just doesn't. It's not logistically feasible to do it that way, unless you're not the one providing the service. If I had a coder or something that was somebody was making the chatbots, but again, I don't even think that's even possible. I don't think that's actually possible that I would have a coder or somebody to do this for me. And the reason is because unless I were to compromise on what it is that I'm making, like if I was to make the Convo Works chatbots, then I don't have to do any coding. I'll leave that all up to Toll. Um, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with the ConvoWorks chatbots. And honestly, everything that I'm doing, it's totally possible that Toll will do that with ConvoWorks, like, it'd probably do a better job and do it faster. Like I could think of something, oh, that's amazing, and go like make it and stuff like that. And then like a week later, it's like, oh, he just added the same thing to ConvoWorks. I could have just not done that. I could have just spent all that time instead of developing that. I could have just been selling ConvoWorks, and it would have achieved the same result, except for that I would have made money and Toll would have made money, and we'd have like a functioning business. So that is great, and that is true. However, like I don't know where it's going, and in terms of like what type of chatbot I will develop next, I don't know. And that's a good thing. Like I shouldn't know that. This is new territory. This is a new thing that people, like it's just like when websites first were a thing, in like the late 90s or whatever. And it's like, okay, what, like you could go like more design focused. You could, then the SEO became a thing, and it's like conversion rates, like, oh, ugly websites sell better. Or, oh, this website should like, it's just really just a placeholder. It's just a place to put all your videos. And they're like, oh no, this website like has a bunch of functionality, or this website has like the, news items that, like to draw people in, or like, no, now this website is actually an app. Like it just develops, it evolves in all sorts of ways. You can't really predict where it's going to go, but you do have to be able to like keep pushing it forward and following your intuition, um, and have that channel. So if I were to totally outsource that to Toll or some other hypothetical person, I know I'm saying the name wrong, probably Tolle, uh, then I lose all creative control. And maybe that will solve my problems. Maybe I can actually start a business. Maybe I'll actually have money coming in. Maybe I can focus on just one task instead of constantly having to switch tasks and pay. But um, it kind of defeats the whole point of what of doing this from the very beginning. Because from the very beginning, it was okay. ChatGPT came out. This is going to be the new thing. This is going to change the way the internet functions. But it's very unclear right now how exactly it's going to develop. And so if I was gonna just say, well, I'm gonna like just take this box and this is what I sell. I sell this box. And like whether that box changes, gets better, gets worse, blah, blah, blah. I don't have control over that. That's up to somebody else. If I was willing to do that, then I should have not started this business in the first place. Because I could then in that case I could just be selling milk teas, you know? It's like if you're a milk tea aficionado, and that is your reason for selling milk teas, that's totally different than like somebody else is making the milk teas and your job is just to sell them. So basically I am like a chatbot aficionado, and therefore like just taking somebody else's chatbot, regardless of how well it functions, regardless of how extensible it is or whatever, it's taking away from that core thing for me, which is the experimenting and tinkering and improving on the chatbots and having my own ability to do that without having to rely on somebody else to do that. So that is like the core. That is the core impetus here. And if you take that away, then nothing I'm doing makes any sense at all, basically. So the number one thing I have to do is just that, just, follow my intuition about how I should develop these chatbots and keep experimenting and tinkering. And then make some marketing material based on what I've done, and then try to make sales. Yep.